Hello there, this is James of Scrofty 1978, and yesterday I finished watching the final episode of the anime Kyoukai or Kanata, Beyond the Boundary, and in spite of the fact that even though we expect animes to suddenly switch from powerful drama, romance, or what have you, to absurdist comedy and slapstick, the series as a whole suffers from a jarring inconsistency of tone, with almost all of the comedy revolving around A, the fact that Akihito has a fetish for girls in glasses, with that apparently being intended to make up for the fact that they never actually develop or provide a backstory for his character, and we never really learn anything about him. B. Hiroomi having an incestuous fetish for his little sister and, quote, little sister types in general, and C. Him repeatedly and unexpectedly warming his hands in Akihito's armpits without consent, as well as the entire world and premise of the series essentially being a romantically focused reworking of Puella Magi Madoka Magica. The sixth episode being an unnecessary comic relief break with a cringeworthy and crowbarred-in musical number at the end. Beyond that, my never being certain whether things such as Akihito's mother being an overly sexualized and eccentric exhibitionist and Marai doing fetish photo modelling to pay for food were a satire of the gratuitous sexualization of female characters in anime or merely a blatant example of it, as well as Akihito's mother having may as well been cut from the series entirely because we never know or learn anything about her either. Hang on, I will get to the praise eventually. Along with the subplot with Sakura, the little sister of the girl who Marai killed, seeking revenge, being ended far too suddenly and conveniently for my liking, with the indication that the magical weapon which she used would consume her if she continued to use it, apparently only being meant literally, instead of giving us the much darker, corrupted by vengeance subplot that I was expecting and hoping for, and the icing on this particularly disappointing cake being that the entire series apparently did everything possible, in my humble opinion, to soften its own impact and avoid ever being too thought-provoking or upsetting, with, unless I missed something vitally important, the conclusion being the worst kind of intelligence-insulting happy ending, apparently tacked on at the last minute to avoid making people feel bad. There is one positive aspect of this anime which I wish to praise, literally the only reason why I'm making this video, which I hope gives you some indication of how important it is to me, the fact that although it was nerfed after reaching its crescendo in episode 4, apparently as part of the series' desperate struggle to avoid ever being too dark or profound, Kyoukai no Kanata actually showed Marai genuinely suffering and struggling as a direct result of being the chosen one, instead of constantly whining like a broken jet engine because she believes that being the Slayer is why Daddy left, that it got her expelled from high school, and it negatively impacts upon her social life. Oh, why can't I just be a normal girl? Needless to say, of course, I'm talking about Buffy, the motherfucking vampire slayer, because although the glaring flaws and failures and problematic aspects of that series could fill an entire library, and are all more or less the result of Joss Whedon not being anywhere near as clever, as talented, or as progressive or enlightened as he obviously believed himself to be, at least not back then, the fact that as late as season 5, after being stripped of her powers as part of a test in season 3 and realising that she could never just be a normal girl, Buffy was still whinging and whining about how hard it was to be the Slayer and wishing that she could be quote-unquote normal, when almost nothing bad that ever happened in her own life, not even Angel becoming Angelus because he loved her, and especially not her mother's brain tumour and subsequent death, had anything to do with being the chosen one. To quote Jonathan in one episode, "'Cause the burden of being beautiful and athletic, yeah, that's a crippler." Instead, whether you still adore the series from the bottom of your heart, or like me have grown to utterly despise it as you finally come to realise just how flawed and problematic it actually was, Buffy being the Vampire Slayer was never anything but an analogy for the existential crisis and struggle of becoming an adult. With the series itself, specifically in terms of character interaction and character development, never really being anything more than a teen high school drama during the first 3 seasons, a college drama in the 4th season, and a general family drama after that point, which just happened to be set in an entirely and absurdly fictional universe in which vampires, werewolves, and demons do exist, but bisexuality doesn't unless you're evil, and no, I am never going to let that go. So while, as I indicated earlier, it bottled out in later episodes by showing a great deal of the blood that she had used returning to her body after at least one battle, suggesting that she doesn't lose anywhere near as much as we fear she might, and reassuring us that the only reason why she's so poor and hungry all the time is that she spends all of her money on bonsai, which is absurd. The fact that Kyoukai no Kanata shows us at least some of the true emotional, physical, psychological and social cost and damage of being born as the Chosen One, declaring her blood to be cursed, both literally and metaphorically, indicating that her entire extended family was wiped out by other spirit warriors precisely because they feared and hated their cursed blood so much, and that Marai was only kept alive by the Nase family as a weapon, knowing that only cursed blood could defeat the one from beyond the boundary. Blood which is corrosive and toxic, meaning that she is treated like a monster and other people are afraid to even touch her. Even leaving that aside, while, as I said before, they attempt to downplay it in later episodes, the physical cost of losing blood every time you fight, and always needing to fight, not for heroic or benevolent reasons, but simply to pay for food and rent. And on top of that, although once again they ended this subplot far too soon and with no substantive payoff, the crushing guilt and pain of having been forced to kill your only friend because she was possessed by a Yomu, the only person who, while you were growing up as a prisoner in her parents' house, ever treated you as a human being instead of as a monster to be controlled, used, and then disposed of when you no longer served a purpose. And all of this bearing in mind that when the series began, Marai was only still around 15 years old. Buffy Summers, bitch, please. After all, when you actually take a moment to consider what it would be like to be a vampire slayer or what have you in real life, not least the crushing responsibility, all concerns about high school, your social life and so forth are quickly reduced to a meaningless joke. So in the end then, in spite of all of the glaring flaws, failings and absurdities which I listed at the beginning of this video, this is the reason why I declare Kyoukai no Kanata to be Buffy the Vampire Slayer done right. The fact that rather than being the incessant whining of a poor little rich girl whose overly dramatised teen angst and first world problems had almost nothing to do with being the chosen one, regardless of what she may have believed to the contrary, Marai genuinely and correctly believed that being the chosen one made her unique in the worst possible way that we can imagine, believing that she was totally alone and more importantly, that she deserved to be alone until she realised that no different from Angel in the Buffy the Vampire Slayer universe, rather than having friends, Akihito only had people who he trusted to find a way to kill him if necessary.